and welcome to another episode of Teachers for Teachers. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm super excited. We're live. I also want to introduce to you my colleague and friend, Dr. Leah, with us again. Hello.
Hello, Dr. Dejana. What a fun show we're going to have today.
I'm pretty excited.
I am too. First of all, it is Inauguration Day, and we are all still a little electrified by the morning. The amazing poet laureate, the incredible new vice president we have, and he was not my first choice, but as of today, I am convinced that he is the right man to be president right now. Joe Biden did an amazing job over this last few weeks of trying to bring people together. And so I know a lot of people are going to watch this when it's not Inauguration Day, but for us today it is, and I feel like we really need to acknowledge it. It was such a wonderful day.
Absolutely. Take a pause. Yes, and recognize there are some great things about our country. This peaceful transition of power that continues to happen and demonstrate democracy for us as individuals and also for our students and children all around the country. So it was a good day.
It was. So do you think we should introduce our guest and our panel?
Go for it. I'll start with, let's start with the panel and then I'll hand you our special guest.
All right.
All right. So again, we thank all of you out there for joining us. And I also want to welcome our amazing panel. I mean, we can't get better than what we have. Welcome, Tim Griffin. Say hello, Tim.
Hey, it's so good to see you guys. How's everybody doing today?
Oh, smiles all around. Tim is a regular with us. He's a retired STEM teacher and an award-winning singer, songwriter, and storyteller. He's the founding director of Griffin Ed, a nonprofit team of educators and musicians that are dedicated to raising academic achievement in STEM and other subjects through fun educational music. If you haven't had the chance to check his website out, please, www.griffined.org. So happy to have Tim join us for these conversations. We also want to say hello to Dr. Mark Riddle. Say hello.
Hey, glad to be back.
So good to have you, Mark. Dr. Mark Riddle has degrees in music, theology, and sociology. He currently works at West Coast University and lives in the wonderful city of Los Angeles. And then last but not least, I'd like to welcome again, Ann Mullen. Say hello, Ann.
Thank you, Dr. Zuzana. Great to be with you on this absolutely fabulous day. Thank you so much for having us all together.
Wonderful. Ann is also an accomplished and respected education consultant based in Los Angeles. She's currently the project director of COSIN's Empowered Superintendents Program and the author of Life Lessons in Leadership. What an amazing panel that we have joining us for this conversation. All right, Dr. Leah, go ahead. The moment, introduce our special guest.
All right. Today we have an amazing educator from NCORP, who is Dr. LaTeira Haynes. So you have two Dr. Hayneses today. And Tiara was originally an immunologist and made the transition into teacher in about 2016. She's with LA Unified School District, and she's teaching biology and physiology. She won the California League of High Schools Award for the Educator of the Year, her first year of teaching as the Rookie of the Year. And I'm excited to hear how that came about, how the transition was made. So please join us, Dr. Haynes.
Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, let's start with the obvious. How does someone go from, I mean, you were on your way as an immunologist to a career in one direction, and now you find yourself in a high school science class. So yes. Tell us how it happened.
Yes, I would love to. So I decided that I wanted to get my PhD like early on. I was always into science. Like I used to watch surgeries on Discovery Channel growing up. I don't know if you guys remember, but they used to show that stuff. And I thought it was the coolest thing. So for the longest, I thought I wanted to be a doctor. But then I got into some summer research programs. And I became aware of being a scientist. I had no framework that I could possibly be a scientist. I thought that was for like Bill Nye, the science guy. So I just went on this trajectory and I ended up coming to UCSD and I joined their biomedical science PhD program. And so while I was there, as a PhD student, you have to either teach a semester as an assistant, or they had this program called, oh my goodness, it's escaping me right now. It was funded by NSF, but there was a program where you could work with a high school teacher for a year and help them translate the research that you were doing to high school students. And I decided to do that program instead because I didn't think I could deal with like what was in my mind. Sorry, bratty, like bratty college students. I was like, I can deal with high school students, but not the college students. But that might be the other way around for most people, but that's what I was thinking. So I end up doing this program and I absolutely love it. And around that time as well, I was also like tutoring at the library, and I just really loved translating science. So a little background about me, I am the only person to go to college. Like my brothers didn't go, my parents didn't go to college. The only person I knew who went to college was my aunt. And so I spent most of my time explaining to my family what I did. And so I got really good at taking really high science concepts and making them understandable. And I realized that was a huge talent. So that was part of it. But the other part was that as I was getting my PhD and I would go to these conferences and I was at my institute and recognizing that like, I was like the only Black person who was a scientist in the building. And I would go to these conferences and there was just like hardly any people who like looked like me. And I started really thinking about the fact that I do come from parents who didn't even go to college. And I do come from neighborhoods where many people didn't go to college and nonetheless I get a PhD, right? And so I really started thinking about the teachers who poured into my life. Like I had so many teachers who recognized my potential and like pushed me and like guided me. And so I realized like, man, I really want to do that. I'm sure there are so many more kids, so much more kids like me in those neighborhoods. And so I was like, okay, I think this is what I want to do, but I battled with it for a long time, guys. I was like, okay, well, let me just see if there's like a program like this, because I don't know how you become a teacher. All I know is science. Like I was like, all I know is the lab. And so I did a quick Google search and I found Encore. They were like, how'd you find this? I was like, I don't know. I searched on Google. And I found Encore and I started the process and I was still not sure. But during that time, I just realized that I just had a deep passion for translating science. And I have a deep passion to see students like myself, like really change the face of science in the face of like biomedical research or any scientific research in our country. I think there's so much that my students would have to offer the field. And I can't wait to see them become scientists. I have quite a few who have gone to major in science fields in college. So I'm super excited about that right now. So that's a little bit a quick rundown of my story.
Dejana, you have to be relating to so much of what was just said.
Absolutely 100%. Like we should have met some other time in life. 100%. I haven't shared my background story here, but I too have a PhD in science, marine science. I spent many years. I love the ocean. And then I also spent 10 years actively working in the field. Mm-hmm. And my path crossed with young people. And I had the opportunity to teach and translate and communicate the wonders of the ocean to young people. Mm-hmm. And I recognized that is so much more powerful and inspiring and turned on my light so much more than the paper I was publishing every 3 years that maybe 10 people would read. I'm not quite sure what that impact was on the, protein synthesis in deep sea hydrothermal vent mollusks. Yeah. Does that sound interesting to any of you on the panel?
We're just like, kind of.
I just sat up a little taller in my chair when you said that.
You were just like, I thought it was amazing when you said that. When you said protein synthesis, that was all about it.
Okay. So
and I'm thinking I'm going to get LaTeira to translate science again.
So it's a real deal. So I think it will be great for our viewers to just kind of hear from you. I know I've shared this with people too, of what that looks like, taking that energy and that knowledge that you have as a working scientist and bringing that and making it real for the students that you get to engage and interact with.
Yes, I would love to share that. So one of the amazing things I think was just like serendipitous is that like NGSS was like, coming out as I was going into the classroom. And I know for many teachers who have not had that research background, it's just a huge paradigm shift. But NGSS, the way it's done, and for those who may be listening, is Next Generation Science Standards. But those standards are made for students to think like scientists. And so when I was coming in, I was like, yes, this is how I wish they did like science education in the classroom. So I really got to take like the fact that you have to think like a scientist and like question everything. And I bring that into the classroom. My students, like they've learned from me that like I will ask them tons of questions and not give them answers, or they can ask me questions and not give them answers. And they're like, Dr. Haynes, I was like, there's so many things that we don't know yet. We have to question things. And so I love Miss Frizzle. So growing up, like Miss Frizzle was like the best in Magic School Bus. And so I take a lot of that passion with me into the classroom. And so because I have a PhD in biomedical science, I was able to easily get credentialed for my CTE credential. And so I have a biotechnology CTE credential as well. So I teach biotechnology in the class. And so I have like a fully decked out lab, and my students do experiments that most juniors in college don't even get a chance to do. So like when they're talking about PCR with like COVID-19, a PCR test, like my students have done multiple PCRs in the classroom. So they like know what's happening, right? And so it's just been so fun for like to see my students like really get the joy of being in a lab and running your own experiments and things. And so, yeah, I've just like loved seeing my students light up, the ones that are like half asleep when I'm talking about protein synthesis. And then we do a lab where we make bacteria produce green fluorescent protein. And I'm like, how do they do that? But they got to see bacteria glow in the dark. And so they're like, okay, I want to learn how I made bacteria glow in the dark. And so that's one of my favorite things, is just really not only just getting the labs done, but for them to see how it can be applied in real life. And yeah, it's been so much fun.
I want to be in your class 37 years ago. Imagine
right. If I want to be in my class.
37. We just go back in time. 37. I want to be in your class 100%. That is so cool. Like with this COVID, like PCR, I know what that is.
Yeah.
Messenger RNA. Oh, we did something about that. That's really powerful.
Yeah.
And then also, I loved what you said. I don't want to monopolize the conversation here, but obviously we have things in common. I love what you said about question everything.
Yeah.
That we don't like, when I was a kid, I thought my teachers knew everything. And I thought it was my job to repeat to them whatever they told me that they knew.
Yeah.
Where now we're in this place where like we're lifetime learners. Like let's just continuously be curious and ask questions.
Yes.
And so your whole like spill on question everything. I don't give you the answer. Sometimes I don't know it. I'm asking you.
Guys, I'm bad. So when my kids when they don't question things, I tell them, I was like, I'm gonna start lying to you. I'm gonna start lying to you on purpose until you catch me. And they're like, what, miss? Don't do that. I was like, hey, you got to catch me. Because it was such a hard transition. Like, even through college, they don't really teach you to question everything. It wasn't until I got to grad school, and one of my first assignments was to read this article and then tell the teacher what the authors should have done instead, and how you can make this experiment better, and what they should do later. And I was like, what? What? And they're like, yeah, that's what I want you to do. I'm like, I'm just used to reading textbooks, and the textbook is right. And they're like, no, tell me how they could have done this experiment better. What controls should they have? I'm like, I don't know. Like, yeah.
There was an interesting study on that that kind of ties into that a couple of years back, where somebody wanted to know, do high school valedictorians go on to achieve more than regular high school students? And what they found was high school students, the valedictorians in most high schools tend to go on to be very good dental assistants or, assistant managers. They rise to the second tier of management or leadership, but very seldom step into the driver's seat, because the way our schools are run is designed to reinforce and reward compliance.
Yes.
People who are good at following directions, good at carrying out the instructions they've been given. And those are the people who follow the instructions better than anyone else become the valedictorians.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That's such a good point. And they peak early. They are like top of their class in school, and then forget that there's more. But also when people stop giving you all the information that you're supposed to know, because that's the other thing, the old way of educating. And this is part of what Dejana and I think everybody on here is really passionate about it, but Dejana and I work for the same company, and that is our goal, to to help us rethink the way we're educating. And in the past, it was all rewarding memorization. And now what we want is exploration, research, getting kids digging into what they're interested in, trying to find out more answers. And the younger we can expose them, the better. I had the opportunity to go to the Magnet Schools of America conference a couple of years ago in Baltimore, and they gave us a tour of a group of different, all Title I schools. And the one of the schools we went to had a program. This was a middle school. They had a program in conjunction with the local hospital, where an educator from the hospital came and worked with these middle school kids who were interested in maybe going into medicine. And they brought little lab coats, and they referred to them as doctor when they were in the class. They were, and like my interest is like the longevity research that's available with that group. How many of them pursue the field? Because you could see them when they put their lab coats on. They came, came in out of the hallway. They put their lab coats on, and they were as proud as could be. They talked to each other as doctor this and doctor that. It was.
I might take that. We have the lab coats, but maybe I'll have them do doctor. I call them scientists when they're in classroom, but yes, they love the lab coats. And when they graduate from our magnet center, we have like a white coat ceremony, and they get lab coats with their names on them.
Wonderful.
It's so awesome. But they love when they put in their lab coats. They're like, Miss, I feel smart. I was like, it's like a superhero cape, right? Like.
I want to be on the list with Dejana for your classroom, because I have.
Me too.
Ann's there too. Okay, well, I have a sense that you're making it fun for the kids to learn.
Yes, we have fun. I'm a drill sergeant in the lab until the beginning, but afterwards I'm like, look, we're using fire today. You're not burning down things on my watch. But besides that, we have a great time.
That's wonderful. I know you shared with us that you were inspired by Miss Frizzle, the Magic School Bus, and who doesn't get inspired by that type of education, right? Who doesn't want to be, as an educator, who doesn't want to be their own Mrs. Frizzle? And for those educators, those parents that are educating at home, like, check out the Magic School Bus again.
Yes, they revamped it on Netflix. They had the old Magic School Bus and the new one on Netflix. I've told you, I'm unashamed in my watching of children's TV and books.
Gotta watch that. I haven't seen that. I didn't know there was a new one. I have to watch that 100%. I wish, when I was a kid, I had to watch nature programs, which were narrated by some, a British voice actor, and I love them. But there's something really different about watching these really cool animated, all hands-on explorations into science, and just really a celebration of curiosity and individualism.
So Mark, I'm guessing that a lot of the kids coming out of LaTeira's class would make really great students for your program at West Coast.
I can't help but imagine that. I think the thing that turns me on the most, though, is I follow a bunch of astrophysicist women on Twitter, and they're always talking about banging their heads against the patriarchy, having to having people mansplain to them all the time. But I heard some of the same talk from LaTeira that when you're in the classroom and the kids are fascinated by the possibility of actually doing science and not just stoking their egos, then all kinds of good stuff happens.
I want to ask LaTeira, because boy, I get it, and I'm right with you that I want to sit in her classroom. But of course we are. And I know I wouldn't be sitting for long because she would have us doing all kinds of stuff. But we are certainly in an unusual time right now. And I work with a lot of districts on how do we get this remote learning thing working. So LaTeira, how do you transfer the excitement and the enthusiasm that you have when your kids are with you in class to the way you're having to teach now remotely? Do you have any strategies to suggest to other teachers that might work to keep them engaged and excited as your students are?
Yeah, sure. This is just amazingly difficult, right? And we've all been growing, and I've been growing from other teachers as well. But some of the things that I use in the classroom, I still am able to use. And so I like to use interactive presentations. And so I know a lot of teachers use Nearpod. I use Pear Deck, which is a great way to make the presentation interactive, and I get to check in with the students. And I found the use of like little mini video clips and things to pull the kids in, because especially that 9 a.m. class, you would think we were asking the kids to come to school at 4 a.m. They're like half asleep. And so one of the things, so for instance, I also teach physics, guys. They have me teaching everything. I teach physics.
I'm not surprised.
So for instance, we're learning about waves in physics, and I'm always trying to think outside of the box. And I thought about waves, and I'm like, okay, everyone's wondering if 5G is causing COVID and crazy things like that. And so I was like, what is something in pop culture when waves have been used? And I was like, oh, the Incredible Hulk. And so then I pull up a clip of Bruce Banner getting that gamma radiation. It's like, what happens? And so then the kids are like, oh my goodness, miss, this is super cool. And so we're not in class using the slinkies and stuff like I would love to, but I have the videos of the slinkies, and maybe some of the students can do little hands-on experiments. But what I found with my students is that some of the home life of some of my students is just a little bit too chaotic for some of the things that I would like to do. And so I let them know of things they can do, but things that are not required, and show videos of either myself doing those experiments or someone else. But I think what I found helps the best is allowing my students to ask as many questions as they can, and making this classroom atmosphere where I'm hearing their voice almost as much as they're hearing my voice, whether that is a typed voice or if it's a spoken voice, because a lot of students these high school students are so self-conscious, y'all. So they're okay with typing, but some are not okay with speaking. But I found that helps tons. And so in my classes, I've been trying to make everything as relevant as possible. And then I've used Labster for some online interactive labs, which has been really cool. And so some of my students love it, and some of my students are like, Miss, this is killing me. So it depends on the students. I'm learning that some like certain things and others don't. And so I'm trying to differentiate basically online and find what works best for different students. But yeah, I would say the biggest thing is making sure you hear their voice often. Yeah.
Thank you for that. That's great. Thank you.
And how are you finding, what's the percentage of students logging in, and who are you losing, do you think?
I would say my freshmen were struggling a lot. It's hard to transition to high school normally, but transitioning to high school in a pandemic online is really hard, and trying to build those relationships. And so I found that for the ones that would sign on, every class, we spend time on Padlet. And I basically have a Padlet where we just chat, what's on your mind today? And we just talk about whatever's on our minds. And it's trying to build that classroom atmosphere and get to know one another. And I have some freshmen that I really can't wait to meet, because we've had such good conversations online. They've shared about their lives and such. But yes, I would say my freshmen struggled a lot, because I teach every grade level presently. And most of my students track with me. And so the students that I've had for 2-3 years already, we know each other. We just hit the ground running. But for my freshmen, I would say they struggled the most. Yeah.
And how much of your story do you share with your students?
Oh, I share tons. I'm I want to know super open people. And so I share with my students, and I try to share with my freshmen right away. And then I'll have some that latch on quickly, oh, I want to know more about that. And how'd you do this? And I try to share. I found that a lot of my students haven't seen much or like maybe experienced much in life. And so I try to share as much as possible. Like I am not from California. I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio, and in South Florida, and then like went to school in Georgia and then decided to move to California. And I love to travel. So I share like pictures of when I like go on trips, and I share about the lab, and I show pictures from the lab and like my research and such. So I try to share as much as possible because it can spark something. Like I'm just hoping for some students that it will spark something. And I found that helps a lot. And so I am one of those teachers who are super open. I know a lot of teachers are like, that's not their thing, but it doesn't bother me. I'm pretty like impervious to lots of people's thoughts about me. So yeah, it's been great to share with my students.
Well, it's wonderful for them to hear about you being the first in your family to university. And you know, we share a lot too. Now that I know you're from Ohio, I'm just from the other side of the lake. I'm from Western Ontario. I also am the first one in my family to go to university. I have 24 cousins in my generation.
Oh my goodness.
We're all farm people. Nobody was going on to university. So now in the next generation, there are some who are on, but it's like the you know, you can't see it, you can't be it if you can't see it, or if you can be it. So having that story to share with people, I'm sure for you is a huge for me it's a little like I don't have a classroom anymore, but when I was teaching at the university, I went back to school to do my PhD much older than most. And so I had students in front of me who were in their 30s and some in their 40s thinking about going on, and then thinking maybe they're too old, and be like, hey, no, you're not. It's
exactly.
You can do this whenever you want to do this. Ability to do this. So
that is wonderful. I had a student actually last week who told me, and it was like, Miss, like, I really want to start like looking into colleges because I'll be the first to go to college too. Can you like help me? And I was like, of course, honey, I will help you. And so yes, like we get those things all the time. And I've heard from like multiple, like the emails I get from my students their first semester of college is like my best, like favorite thing ever. Like whenever I'm struggling, I'm like, why did I do this? I should go back to the lab. Like I get an email like right on time, and like, oh, it just touches my heart. Like a student who's like just finished her first year and was like, I never thought I would go to college until like I came to like your class, and they're just like, oh, praise God. So I was super happy.
I think you guys are, oh, go ahead. I was thinking you guys are touching on the importance of mirrors and doors.
Yes.
And that's just such a beautiful thing. 100% is to be that mirror and show them the pathway to open those doors.
So true. I was wondering when you were saying like on those days when you just feel like, why shouldn't I should go back? Is that a reaction to the administrative part of teaching or the students? It's
that the administrative part. Okay, y'all, like for me, like, so coming from like science and then going into education, I was like, this is the most unorganized thing ever. And it's so illogical. Some of these things that we do make no sense to me. And so it drives me crazy, right? That I have like all these administrative things going on. And since I've started teaching, I've never taught less than 3 courses, like 3 preps. And so I currently teach 4 preps. And so I'm always like going crazy. And this is the first year that I don't have a new class. So for the past like 5 years, I was given a new course every year. Like I've taught, I think I'm in my 5th year, and I've taught like 6 different courses. I've taught physiology, I've taught forensic science, I've taught science tech and research, biology, physics, and like 3 different biotech classes. So yeah, that's like 8 classes.
Didn't you go through something similar this year where they gave you new programs to teach that you had not taught before?
Oh, are you talking to me? I missed that. Absolutely. But honestly, it just keeps me growing. It keeps me growing.
Yeah, it keeps like growing. Yeah, it keeps you growing. I learned so much. I enjoy teaching them, but like, you know, you want to teach in excellence. And I'm like, you gotta let me like prep for these things and how I'm gonna do that. But anyway, yeah, so it's that administrative stuff in education. And I'm just like, oh my goodness. I will confess, I am like the worst in faculty meetings. I was like, this is not organized. I can't focus. I'm gonna lesson plan.
Oh, I love it. Okay, I'm gonna send you some teacher faculty meeting memes because there's different types of people. There's that person that's
That
like,
is me.
are you
Everybody
kidding me?
knows that like she's gonna be doing work. I'm like half listening.
Then there's the faculty member that keeps asking questions.
Oh my gosh.
Want to leave? Yeah.
Yes.
And then there's the one that's asleep in the corner. And then there's the ones that are like viciously grading papers, have like 5 different things, prepping the lesson plan for tomorrow, even setting up the lab. Like there's a Bunsen burner right there.
No, seriously. Like when I have those labs to set up, oh my, like being like, I know how to set up the labs, but setting up for like 30 kids, they don't give me small lab classes, guys. They don't give me like, oh, you're doing these great labs. You can have a class of 16. No, I have a class of 30 and I'm doing like elementary. So setting those things up, yeah. So it takes a lot of time.
Well, Mark and I both worked at the same university for a while, and my advisor, Dr. Erdnest, always felt that his main job at a faculty meeting was to call for a close. He was looking for an opportunity to do that from the minute it started. But I also have a tough announcement that like our half hour is up. This has been so fun and so engaging.
You just called for a close, didn't you?
She did. She was trained by the best. Trained by the best.
Yes, I see.
Well, what can I say? This has been a really fun and informational conversation. Thank you so much to our panelists for joining us very frequently, Tim, Ann, and Mark. And thank you, Dr. Haynes, for just sharing your journey and sharing your joy for teaching with all of us and all of our listeners. I'm Dr. Dejana, and I'm here with my other Dr. Haynes. And that's it for today, our live episode of Teachers for Teachers. We hope to see you next time.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.